Hi everyone, we're going to get started now. So hop on your computers and get back online. So my name is Haley. I'm here from OMX. I have Nicole here with me as well. Our webinar today is on the future of manufacturing. So Nicole's going to brief OMX's part in that, and then we have Martin here from CME. Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, and we have Warren here from Succession Matching, and they're going to get into their presentations in a little while, but first we're going to hear from Nicole.
Hi everyone, just wanted to say thank you, just set this up. So my background before launching OMX was in manufacturing, and it's always been a big topic about manufacturing in Canada, and it's kind of an exception when the dollar is quite low, but that's not really a sustainable advantage. It's not traditionally a low-cost environment for manufacturing. So my belief is that Canadian companies have really excelled in manufacturing over the years through innovation, through technology, through vertical integration, through automation, and focusing on increasing their competitiveness around the world. So it's an exciting topic, and we've heard a lot in the recent year or so about Industry 4.0 and the next step with this connection of Internet of Things. Martin, I don't want to overshadow Martin's presentation, but it's really an exciting sort of next step for manufacturing in Canada. And at OMX, we deal primarily with offsets, and government are issuing RFPs now where they require large foreign corporations to make investments in Canada, and there's been huge focus in recent RFPs on advanced manufacturing. So that's one of the key pillars now where the government is trying to incentivize corporations to make investments in. And part of that, obviously, is to also help companies reduce their supply chain and integrate their supply chain and have their supply chains adopt Industry 4.0 to be more competitive, to then make themselves more competitive. And so OMX really falls into the strategic sourcing and sourcing, reducing supply chain costs and tracking supplier data. That's really where we excel. So we think this is a good fit to have these two very different companies present today. So CME, you may not know, they've been around since 1871, so they've been a really valuable trade association here in Canada, and we've had a really great relationship with them since the very beginning of OMX. In our press release announcing we were launching OMX, we got a great quote from CMA sort of welcoming us into the fold. So they've been a really great organization, and looking forward to hearing from Martin. And then with Succession Matching, I met one of their founders at an economic development conference in Saskatchewan. And this is a really interesting technology platform that serves the gap between mostly manufacturing companies and their ability to succeed to the next generation to be sold. So very different organizations presenting, but all kind of relative to manufacturing. So lastly, I just want to thank our media partner, which is Vanguard, who have been promoting and they're working with us all through 2017 on this, and we've been working with Vanguard now for 4 years. We do Tech Watch columns every month, and we're doing a lot with them. So huge thank you to Vanguard as well. So with that, I will turn it back to Haley to have Martin start.
Okay, so just before we get into it, a couple housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded. I will make the link available like I have with all the past webinars. We will be doing these bi-weekly, so every other Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're ever looking for the link, it'll go out in our newsletters, and I also post it on our LinkedIn, our Twitter, and it's on all the OMX accounts and made available to everybody. The webinar links are also posted under OMX Intel in our opportunities feed, so if you're ever wondering when the next one's coming up or what topics we're going to be covering, it'll be listed there. Next thing is, if you do have questions, we will be answering at the end. We should have about 5 minutes at the end to get that covered. So if you want to direct them to one specific person, either myself, Martin, or Warren, please just say the name at the beginning of the message, of the question, sorry, and I will make sure that I direct it towards the correct person. So yeah, without any further ado, I will introduce you to Martin. He's going to be taking over from here. I'm just going to quickly move ahead in my slides so that he can get started. And Martin, I'm going to pass the mouse over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much, Haley. Thanks for inviting me. Martin Lavoie with Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. For those who don't know us, we're Canada's largest industrial association, and we've been around for a little while. As you mentioned, we've been around since 1871. I guess there's two stories about that. The official one is that we were the voice of the industry back in 1871. I guess the unofficial story is that I think we were set up by Johnny McDonald to do some political fundraising. But anyways, that's a little internal dirty story, I guess. So what we're going to talk about today, I was really glad to see the OEMX doing this session on the future of manufacturing, because for so many years I find in this country we've seen manufacturing as an industry of the past. And you know, if you guys recall back, you know, early 2000s, China joined the WTO, and there was kind of a pessimistic view that, well, we can't compete against China in so many sectors. And for those who remember, we used to have textile manufacturing plants in this country up until up to 2004, and suddenly everything shut down. It's kind of interesting to see some years later. I remember 3-4 years ago when there was you know, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and they were saying that that particular year about 75% of the trade floor was all about smart textile products and wearable electronics. And I thought that's so neat to see, you know, something considered as an old industry like textile coming back in such a new and technological way. So I'm going to try to get to my next slide. Haley, how do I do that? Okay, I got it here. So, all right. So as I just mentioned, you know, manufacturing is still very much cornerstone of our modern economy. I mean, it's still 13% of the national GDP. In some provinces like Quebec, it's even higher. Quebec is about 17% of GDP. It's very interesting that that's a bit of an old slide. I think now it's about 66% of all exports are in manufacturing. It still employs about 1.8 million people in Canada, and even more importantly, about 45% of private sector spending in research and development is done by the manufacturing sector. So next time you meet a politician that says we want more exports, more R&D, just tell them maybe what you want more is more manufacturing. I'll just get to the next slide. There's a bit of a delay. I'm sorry if yeah, I have a bit of an issue with my deck here.
I just moved it forward for you.
Yeah, could you? Yeah.
It's currently on the future of manufacturing slide. Is that the one you wanted on, Martin?
I'm not sure. I don't. You know what? I should just open the deck here and just follow my own version, maybe. Let me just do that. Give me a second. All right, so I'll just use my PowerPoint version. It's gonna be easier. So I'm at slide number 3 now. So yeah, I mean, what I mean by what I really mean today is the future of manufacturing is now. You know, how many times did I hear in the last couple of years things like Industry 4.0 and the 4th Industrial Revolution, advanced manufacturing? You know, every country has its own expression or its own way to express how this new manufacturing is coming back in a very high-tech fashion. But as we know, the industry is currently subject to a deep transformational change in the way we fabricate things. So there's a lot of changes in what I call shifts in paradigm. For example, I'm going to be talking about 3D printing a bit later. That's a good example of how there's really a shift in the way we really conceptualize the fabrication of things, going from a subtractive way to an additive way of making things. But really, when we talk about disruptive technologies, what we talk about is really the disruption of existing business models. And technologies by themselves are not disruptive. They disrupt a way you conduct business. And we've seen it, you know, I mean, we've seen it in many industries. What's happening in manufacturing has already happened in other sectors. You know, recall, for those who remember, I remember Napster, right, where you could just download free music, and in a certain way that technology enabled by the internet has disrupted the music industry. So many other industries have been disrupted, and now it's coming to manufacturing. So what we have in common with those other industries is really the integration of IT technologies in our business model. And what's happening is that it's shifting the added value from the manufactured part itself to its design and its functionalities. And I'm going to talk a bit about that a bit later in the presentation, but when we're going to talk about the Internet of Things, because this is really a good example where the part itself has some, you know, less value, but the data that is generated by the part or by the product is really where the business model will be based in the future. You've heard, for example, in the you know, you've heard people saying that, you know, for example, Uber or Airbnb are companies that are, you know, they don't own any cars and they don't own any hotels. The value of their business model is really in the platform, in the data. So that's also happening to manufacturing now with the ability to connect objects to the internet. So what we have really, what I'm you know, we're at the same time, I said there's a change in the way we make things, but it doesn't mean that everything is going to be replaced. It means that we have some some new tools for the toolbox, and I categorize those tools in three main categories. The first one is additive manufacturing, or if you maybe more commonly use the term 3D printing. And the second one is really the last generation of automation and robotics. Automation and robotics is not new by itself, but the advance in vision systems and sensors in general has made the robots much more autonomous than they were before. So that opens up a lot of new productivity improvements. And the last one, of course, what we call the Internet of Things, but in manufacturing we like to call it the industrial internet, because what we see a lot in manufacturing is the ability to connect your machinery and equipment to the Wi-Fi and use a data analysis to monitor your productivity real time. So let's start with additive manufacturing. Within CME, we've started this network of expertise called Canada Makes. Canada Makes is a national network that brings together a bunch of private, public, academic, not-for-profit entities that are dedicated to the promotion and the adoption of the adoption and the development of additive manufacturing in Canada. When we mean by additive manufacturing, we mean plastics, metals, any material that can really be used in additive manufacturing. Give you just an idea of what the 3D printing market looks like. It really, back in 2009, a lot of patents have expired in the plastics 3D printing, and we've seen a lot of new companies inventing new printers at very low cost, and that has given a lot of a boost to the 3D printing market. But what's happening in 2015 is the expiring of patents in the metal 3D printing industry, and that is really boosting right now as we speak. There's a wave coming. Just to give you an idea, in 2015, the estimated value of global sales of both products and services, so services would be like a company that print a part for another company, for the market totally, was $5.16 billion. It was up 26% from a year earlier. And we estimate by 2020 it's going to be $20 billion. It's 4 times bigger just in 4 years. So it's pretty significant. And what's really interesting is that we're right now really just scratching the surface of what we can do with 3D printing. So it's really exciting. Another kind of example of why it's big. Well, when big guys like GE and Siemens start to acquire companies, it usually means that there's a big wave coming. So GE announced last year, not even, I mean, it was in 2016, but it's not even a year ago. They announced investment of $1.4 billion to acquire 2 of the 5 largest metal laser sintering companies in the world, Arcam and Concept Laser. Siemens acquired 85% in Material Solutions Limited, which is a company producing parts for aerospace gas turbines. So to give you an example that, last time GE made these kinds of of investment in the 1990s was in oil and gas, and guess what? They were seeing this wave coming in the natural resources sector. Now they see it coming in the additive manufacturing sector, and they've created recently GE Additive, which is a new division of the company. The second category I was talking about is automation and robotics. So that's an interesting one because it's really when you talk about being more productive in Canada, this is really where you need to start looking. Additive manufacturing is interesting, but it's not going to disrupt the productivity level as much as automation and robotics. So we've created, again, another group of experts within CME called GEAR Canada. So this is a group of, again, companies, academic institutions that are really trying to democratize the access and the understanding of the new automation systems. And the challenge, of course, being is to take automation out, bring it outside the traditional sectors of, automotive, for example, and also bring those solutions to SMEs that traditionally didn't have the enough production to justify investment in automation. But with the new systems available today, there's an interesting ROI for a lot of SMEs, and especially for a country like Canada. For example, the food processing sector is one that would benefit them probably the most from higher levels of automation. So a couple of thoughts about productivity and stuff like that, and the Boston Consulting Group. I don't need to mention who they are. They say that by 2025, advanced robots will boost productivity by up to 30% in many industries. In manufacturing alone, up 25%. So it's a lot of gains in productivity to be done by further accelerating the adoption of automation and robotics. China, the US, Japan, Germany, South Korea, everybody's in that game now. All these countries account for nearly 80% of robot purchases. I put a quote in there, which is an interesting one because I'm targeting Canada here, that says it's ironic that in some countries where economic logic, for example, high labor cost, low productivity, suggests that manufacturers should urgently convert to automation. They have instead been among the slowest to do so, and that's exactly the case of Canada. And why is that? Well, look at productivity level in manufacturing. In comparing Canada and the rest of the world, we're at $46 per hour worked. So that's output per hour worked in Canada on average. And average countries in Europe, France and Germany, are $58, $56 per hour worked. If you notice, in the first 5, there's 4 European countries, and it happens that we just signed a free trade agreement with Europe, which scares me a little bit because I'm thinking that Canadian companies are being asked to go and compete, in France, in Germany, in Switzerland, and Sweden against competitors in their own markets, but they take an hour and a half to fabricate what these companies can fabricate in an hour. So you got to be you got to find other ways to compete because, as I like to say, a small fish doesn't eat big fish. Big fish always eat small fish, and in that case, I think Canada is very small fish. So we have to do something about that, and I think having more adoption of automation, robotics, and educating our SMEs is really where we need to start. And I'm going to finish up with these Internet of Things, or the industrial Internet. And I know it's a concept that it means kind of everything for everybody. I mean, it seems like today you can connect anything to the Wi-Fi, and a lot of things that I see that are connected just don't have a business case yet for being a successful commercialized product. But still, it's there, and there are companies that are shifting their business models to base it on the Internet of Things. And one example, and I'll just bring that example, and I'll finish with that. Well, I was talking about Napster and Uber, and I bring the slide sometimes when I do presentations. The slide number 13, where you have like Airbnb and Amazon, and there's John Deere in the middle, and everybody's like, what is John Deere doing there? And it's a little anecdote I'll just tell you before I end my presentation. I met with the senior management of John Deere about 3 months ago, and their CEO was there, and he says, well, we were looking at maybe joining the association, the CME, but he's looking at me, he's like, I don't know if we're still considered as a manufacturer. And I said, hold on a minute. I'm like, what are you talking? You're John Deere. You're like the superman of manufacturing. I mean, I've played with your tractors and your trucks when I was like, 5 years old, maybe 10 years old. And I said, it doesn't make sense to me. And he started to tell me that their business model was entirely now based on the data they generate from their products. And I found this nice picture of a big, I'll call it a tractor. I'm sure it has a more sophisticated name. But he was saying that now the tractor itself is just the widget they use to generate the data that they then sell to the farmers. And farmers have access to a platform where they can have a lot of information about the conditions under which they grow their crops. And that's really now the business model. So most of his business issues in Canada and US were not really related to the manufacturing of the tractors. They were related to the privacy of information, and technological challenges with artificial intelligence and stuff like that. So it really opened my eyes that if a company like John Deere is already there, it means there's a lot of other companies that are already there or should be there or will be there in the very soon. So question I want to leave the crowd with before we go to our second presenter is, are we ready for this? Because it all looks like very sexy. And at the same time, why are we so late, and are we ready? Well, I personally think we're not super ready, and I'm just going to list 3 major issues that I think will need to be addressed. First of all, we have a huge infrastructure deficit problem in this country. And when I say infrastructure, I'm not talking about bridges and roads and highways. I'm talking about the internet connectivity infrastructure. I drive from Montreal to Quebec City, and as soon as I get off the highway and I go in a small, a little bit remote area, I don't even have a connection with my cell phone. I mean, you can't ask SMEs that are located in those areas to be 4.0 if their connectivity is trapped, or if they don't have capacity to transfer a huge amount of data over the internet. So to me, the government, if the economy of tomorrow and if the future of manufacturing is in the data, it's like if we wanted to export more, but we didn't want to invest in ports and highways and transportation infrastructure. The second one, I think, is that our colleges and universities don't keep up with the technology, and we have a big problem. We lack highly qualified employees in this country. And what I mean by highly qualified is that not only just higher education, but what you see now is that, especially with the Internet of Things, is that average employees now in those sectors require multidisciplinary education. Most of the time would require a lot of knowledge in IT, of course, because there's connectivity, but also electrical engineering and mechanical engineering, because they all go together now with having the ability to design products that have connectivity. And unfortunately, we still train electrical engineers and mechanical engineers and IT guys without providing them the ability to have knowledge in the 3 sectors. And Siemens, for example, has started its own academy called the Siemens Academy, and they actually took the mechatronics curriculum from Germany and they implement it in other countries where they have planned, because they have a hard time recruiting the right employees. And I think the third one is really for Canada. We have an absence of national public policy supporting manufacturing. Since the Great Depression, well, not the Great Depression, since 2008 and the financial downturn, most countries have adopted industrial strategies. Like the US have set up something like 12 networks of advanced manufacturing knowledge and experts. Germany has its Industry 4.0, and the French, and now even I read yesterday, like I think South Africa now has an additive manufacturing strategy. China 2 years ago said they wanted to put 3D printers in every high school in the country. I just find that Canada is still kind of, pushing, companies to buy CNC machines, while I think where they should go is really pushing companies and SMEs to be early adopters of those new disruptive technologies. So that was my presentation for today, and I'll be happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Martin. I'll leave his contact information up here for everybody. Like I said, again, though, we will distribute the webinar afterwards and make that available. So you'll have access to this slideshow and you'll be able to get Martin's contact details.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. So next we have Warren. Warren, I'm sure you'll give everyone a little background on what succession matching does. So I'll let you take over from here. Again, if anyone has any questions, we will take a few minutes at the end to answer them. So you can write them in through your GoToMeeting, and I will make sure to take care of those at the end, okay? Okay, Warren, here you go.
Thank you. Martin, before I go on to my presentation, I just wanted to say that I come from a strong manufacturing background myself, and one of the great things about manufacturing is it really is an opportunity for you to see opportunities masquerading as problems. And I think right now in Canada there's tremendous opportunity despite all the fear coming out of the US right now. Canada does have, you know, pretty equal flow in terms of imports and exports to and from the United States, and yet we benefit, we're pretty much in tandem, our currency, with the Mexican peso. So I think there's going to be further opportunities to expand that relationship. And I can tell you that I agree wholeheartedly with you regarding automation. I spent many years in electronics manufacturing in a place that had no earthly reason to be doing manufacturing electronics. The only way we were able to compete was we did have, as a matter of fact, many Siemens robotic assembly lines that allowed us to compete with China, Mexico, South Korea, Pakistan, India. And one of the other things that we learned along the way is you know, lots of Canadian companies, in my opinion, incorrectly rely on the weak Canadian dollar in order to be profitable. And I can tell you that if you have, if you're getting 30% margin on your product, but making 30% exchange rate gains, then you're really a currency trader. So we always ran the entire company in US dollars, and I think it's just simply a mindset. Anyway, I'll get on to what I'm here to talk about today, and that is I'm the president of SuccessionMatching.com, and after going through a transition or two myself, I recognize that lots of SMEs, while they are experts in their business and while they spend many years building up that business, when it comes time to transition, it's really not something they've given the most thought towards. And even worse, many find themselves in the situation where a sudden drop in health or something unexpected happens, and now all of a sudden there's an instant need to transition the business when you haven't even given any consideration to it. And like I said, going through a couple of transitions myself, I realized that even if you are going to have help in this area, you know, getting yourself ready and making things as easy for your buyer or your, you know, whoever you're planning to succeed to, I tell you, it just brings a world of relief to make yourself not only more attractive, but to make the transition smoother. Right now, I can tell you during this presentation, I'm going to go through just a market snapshot on the current landscape, an introduction to the different types of transitions and the 5 phases of business transitions. Next slide, please. Right now in Canada, it's an interesting time that we're living in. For the first time, we have more people over 65 than under the age of 15, and many aging entrepreneurs are going to be transitioning their business in the coming years. I think we're at the forefront of a tidal wave of business transitions coming down the pipe, and we've already seen a pretty big uptick in this area. Right now, according to CFIB, there is about $1.9 trillion worth of business assets looking to transition, and by 2022, this number will mushroom to at least 3.7 trillion as over 500,000 owners exit their business. And my apologies, I believe that was a TD study done we know that there are some big changes, lots of transitions coming down the pipe, and as a result, some great opportunities for the next generation of entrepreneurs to take the reins of existing businesses and build their future. Despite the large number of business transitions coming down the pipe, only about 9% of current owners have a formal succession plan in place. And that's at odds with the knowledge that there is this need, and there are a number of aging owners who are going to need to decide where the business goes. So it's a big concern, and there's a big marketplace right now to fill that need, to not only provide the platform as we do for buyers and sellers to connect, but also to provide an educational component to teach both individuals and business owners the importance of giving consideration, especially knowing that the average transition takes 2 to 7 years in Canada. There are generally 3 broad types of succession planning. The business can be transitioned within the family to a son or a daughter, or someone younger who is in the family and wants to continue on. That's not always a guarantee, by the way. In fact, you might be surprised to learn that many sons and daughters of existing entrepreneurs have very little interest in the business. There is the option of doing a employee share ownership plan where you allow your employees to step up and acquire a piece of the business. And there's several things that you can do there to facilitate it. There's several lending institutions who are willing to provide loans for employees to acquire equity stock in the company. And thirdly, there's third-party sales, which is predominantly the area that we work in, and that's where you have an arm's length buyer and seller working together to transition the business. Within the succession plan, there's roughly 5 broad areas, and no matter what these areas are, it all comes down to many people trying to understand when they should start planning, who should it involve, and when should I start it. So it can be complex, but at the same time it doesn't need to be. We have provided a free step-by-step guidebook that covers the 5 phases that I'm about to go through, and you can see at the bottom of this of the current deck page. It's available online, and it gives you a good summary of things to keep in mind. It's available for free, and you can go to the link down below to download a free copy. Phase 1 is generally getting your business ready to sell, and this process usually takes from 1 year to 2 years. It involves getting your company sale ready, getting your books in order, identifying a proper value for the business, identifying any internal issues which would create hiccups to transition, making a plan of action, and finally executing that action. Phase 2 is engaging the family member or staff member or third-party buyer to work through the purchase or sale agreement. Generally speaking, this can take between 6 to 12 months or beyond. I can tell you from my own experience that even when you have a buyer in place, it can take quite a long time to get all of your due diligence, all of your contracts, everything that you need to execute on that sale agreement. And that brings us to phase 3, which is the actual due diligence part. I've been through this before, and I can tell you that it's like a, I don't know if you've ever been audited before, but it can go into much greater detail than a typical audit, And it's interesting from my experience that you think a lot of things are common sense, but your buyer is coming in having no detailed knowledge of the business, and can be quite frustrating for your buyer to understand it, and also frustrating for you to try to explain all the little intricacies and details that make your business unique. So leaving 1 to 12 months for due diligence, although that sounds long, it's actually quite very reasonable. And one of the ways of preparing yourself for that is to come up with a checklist for things, much like preparing for an interview, predicting the questions that are going to be asked of you. And we do provide a checklist for our members that gives a pretty detailed overview of what a buyer is going to be looking for. Phase 4 is the financing side of things. Generally speaking, we tell people between 1 to 6 months. Even if you have a buyer and you've gone through the due diligence and everything looks fantastic, very few buyers have 100% of the cash. Many of them are going to look to use the assets of the business to leverage some support and garner some loans to help with the purchase price. Your buyer may also need to go out and obtain his or her own operating loans and term loans to add new equipment, and that can take some time. And it can also involve you as the seller having to explain all over again to your buyer's banker on why this makes good sense. Phase 5 is executing on the actual transition, and there's quite a wide window here. We have between 0 and 60 months, but that also includes the post-closing part of the transaction, where your buyer may expect you to stay on for 2 to 3 years and help train the new owners. There may be an earn-out related to the purchase price where you get paid for the business over time, subject to future performance of the business. So that can take many shapes and can be negotiated in different ways. One of the interesting things about buying a business versus a startup, buying an existing business generally has a much higher success rate than greenfielding a brand new business from startup. And one of the areas that I think for somebody who wants to become an entrepreneur to have the success of an existing business and the current owner to remain in place to help ensure the continued success of that company. There are some added resources available on our website and beyond that I have listed here, and I believe the presentation will be made available. I'm also available after the presentation if you have further questions. I'm happy to answer any questions and provide any added resources that you may need or want. And that is pretty much it for my presentation today. I appreciate you coming out and taking the time to hear what I have to say. I'm equally passionate about manufacturing and would love to have, for anybody interested, I'd love to share with you some of the ways that we were competitive manufacturing electronics here in Canada and competing with the rest of the world. We did it very successfully. We had good margins, and you know, took the business from 50 employees to well over 300 employees, all while offshore competition kept rising. So I do believe in Canadian manufacturing. It really bothers me when I hear people say that we can't compete with the rest of the world, because it's just not true. So thank you once again for your time, and any questions you have, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Warren, and I have Warren's contact information here up on the screen. Again, this will be made available when I share the link. So Warren, I have a question for you. A lot of your presentation today was geared towards companies who are, or individuals that are looking to maybe potentially transition out of their business and sell it. Do you also provide services for the flip side? So anyone who may be looking to purchase
Yes, the presentation was geared more towards the business owner side, but you are absolutely correct. We have successionmatching.com is an online platform that connects buyers and sellers of businesses using a matching algorithm. It aligns similar interests. Members fill out a series of questionnaires that identifies the industry that they're looking at, the price that they want to buy or sell, and a number of things. And our system tries to match these people up and make successful introductions that ultimately lead to successful business transitions. One of the unique things about our platform versus other business buy sell sites is it actively allows for a seller to actively look for a buyer. It's not just a listing or a compilation of business listings. In addition to that, there is absolutely no commission charged on the sale or purchase of a business on our site. Members pay a small monthly fee, and you know, the onus is on them to work through the due diligence and purchase agreement, and ultimately that is it. We don't take any commission. We just charge a low fee, as low as $12.99 a month to be a member on our site.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you, Warren. And Martin, what type of events do you guys have coming up in the next few months? I know I came out to an event that CME was hosting in Ottawa in 2016. Do you have anything coming up this year? Can you hear me? Martin, can you hear me? Maybe he's not.
Can I just add,
Yeah.
just to confirm what Martin said before, the CME is a valuable resource for Canadian manufacturers. In my past manufacturing life, I can tell you that the CMA was a big supporter of what we were trying to do, and while also representing the interests of Canadian manufacturers, so they do great work.
I'm sorry, guys. I was on mute and I was kind of talking to myself. I'm still here. Yeah, so I was saying that we these days have a lot of events around additive manufacturing. In May, we're going to have our annual conference in Montreal in partnership with the Quebec Government Industrial Research Partnership Consortium called the CRIC. Where we're going to bring, usually we bring national and international speakers, and we're going to try to get some very interesting international people, probably from GE and Siemens and the companies I mentioned in my presentation. And if you're interested on our in automation, for example, on our on www.gearcanada.ca, you can register to our newsletter. Same with CanadaMakes.ca. So.
Great, thank you so much, Martin and Warren. We're just finishing up now. So again, if anyone has any additional questions, my email is up on the screen. You can send them to me, and next week I will send a follow-up email with a link to this, to the webinar, as well as answers to any questions that you may have. So again, that's my contact information. Warren's is here. And then I believe Martin is right here. So if anyone wants to write that down quickly, it's there. Thank you so much for coming out. Martin, Warren, I can't thank you guys enough for being a part of this today. I really appreciate it, and you're both awesome.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to present today.
That's great. Thank you so much, Haley and Nicole and all the team.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Haley.
Okay, everyone enjoy their weekend.
You too.
Bye.